Hello, travelers and guests of Magic, the Friendly Tavern. I am your host, Will, and today we're going to be talking about my Black White Clerics deck in Standard. Alright, to begin with, we are on a life game plan, so let's go ahead and talk about that. First of all, we have whenever another Lunarch veteran for 1 is a 1/1. It has whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 1 life, and you can cast it back from the graveyard for its disturb cost. It comes in as a flying 1/1, and it says whenever another creature you control leaves the battlefield, you gain 1 life. If it would be put anywhere, be put into the graveyard from anywhere, exile it instead. Alright, so that's pretty good. Dawnbringer Cleric, and it enters the battlefield, you gain 2 life, or you can destroy target enchantment or exile a target card from a graveyard. Really flexible, really nice. Here's the main engine of the deck. Hollow Priest for 2 for a 1/1. Whenever you gain life, put a +1/+1 counter on it. You can get really big. This is in the life game pile because it has Menace and Lifelink. It does gain life, but it actually does something else that's other than life gain, and we'll talk about it again when it comes up. Next is whenever another Angel or Cleric enters the battlefield under your control, you gain life equal to its toughness. As long as you have 7 or more life than your starting total, the creatures you control get +2/+2. Really good. This thing is really beating our Delver in Standard right now. The 2/4 flyer for 3 is hard to get through with our Delver. So, when you can't beat them, join them. This guy right here, he's in our pile because of this 2 target human you control gains lifelink until end of turn ability, but he does other stuff that doesn't have to do with lifelink, so we'll talk about him again here in a second. Skim4 Shadow Shade. You can have each opponent lose X life to where X is the greatest number of creatures you control of a creature type, or you can gain life, which is why it's in the gain life file, for the greatest number of creatures you control of a creature type in common. Cleric would be the obvious choice. If you would gain life, you would gain 1 plus that much instead, and then for 4 mana, you can put it on level 2. Whenever you gain life, you put that many +1/+1 counters on target creature you control. That's what we really want it for. That second level right there is really, really good. This third level is not bad either. When it's level 3, we can return a creature from our graveyard to the battlefield and gain life equal to its toughness. That'll come in handy late game. Here we have pay 2, tap it, sacrifice a creature, draw a card. As long as I control a cleric, it has whenever a creature you control dies, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. That's what we really want it for. We want it for that drain effect. Over here is we have clerics that have nothing to do with life gain. So let's go ahead and talk about them. We have Chaplain of Alms, Human Cleric, first strike, ward 1, disturb 4. Really, we have it in here for its second side where it's flying, first strike. Each creature you control has ward 1. That ward 1 for each creature we control is what we really want it for. It's pretty good. Next up is at the beginning of combat on your turn, you may put a +1/+1 counter on creature you control, 2 for a 1/1. Aspirant, Cleric 2. It's excellent. It really works, pulls its weight in this deck. Next, we have the Deans. We have Shali and Imbros. Shali is a flying vigilance, 2 mana, 1/1. I can put a +1/+1 counter on each creature that entered the battlefield this turn. It's really good. For 4 mana, for a 4/4, we can play Imbros. Imbros says tap it, put a +1/+1 counter on another creature. Then Imbros deals 2 damage to that creature. Whenever a creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it dies, draw a card. So we have a pretty big +1/+1 counter theme in here. Again, here's the Null Priest of Oblivion. And if we kick it, for 6 total mana, we get to return a creature from our graveyard to the battlefield. That's really good. That's what we use it a lot for, is for that recursion. Then we have Cathar Sanctifier. If it's neither night or day, it becomes day as this enters the battlefield. Whenever day becomes night or night becomes day, look at the top 2 cards of your library, put 1 in your graveyard. So it's a little bit of card advantage, and we can control. It's also really good against a werewolf matchup because they change night and day so often. We get to really tear through our deck with that, so that's why it's in here. Then we have Selfless Glyph Weaver, which is a human cleric. It's also its front side is a 2/3. I can exile it, and creatures I can control gain indestructible until end of turn, which is great. This comes up a lot. This creature is very good at saving your team. On the other side, it's also an 8-mana Board Wrath. It's a sweeper, so there's always that. You get to choose one and destroy all the others. So that's really good there. We have Jaren, Corrupted Bishop, which flips into Ormondal the Corruptor. Whenever it's the battlefield, I get 1/1 white human. I lose 1 life. Whenever one of our non-token creatures die, we lose a life and get a human. We don't care. We gain enough life in this deck that we overcome that. That's pretty good though. For a 3-mana 2/3 that spits out 1/1 tokens, it's pretty good. The giving the lifelink is also good. If we ever have 13 life, which will probably never come up because usually we have 40 to 50 life, then we can pay 6. If we do, we can transform it into Ormondal, which is a flying trample lifelink 6/6, sacrifice another creature, draw a card. I'm pretty sure that won't come up very often, but if it does, hey, it's there. Next, we're going to talk about Torbax. Torbax has lifelink as long as there are 5 or more +1/+1 counters on it. It starts out as a 3-mana 2/2 flyer. Whenever a non-token creature I control dies, I put a +1/+1 counter on it. If that creature was a cleric, I get to draw a card and lose a life. That's awesome. Works really good in our deck. And the last creature in this pile is going to be Druidguard Necromancer. If a non-token creature an opponent controls would die, exile it instead. That's really what we want it for with an ice counter. We can cast it with our snow permanents, which is good because that's why we're running snow-covered plains and snow-covered swamps. Not very many though, so Druidguard won't get us back much, but the exiling it from the graveyard is good enough for us right now. As for removal, we have 4 copies of Faithful Absence. Yes, it does give them a token, but it destroys a creature or planeswalker, and they have to pay 2 to cash in that card. It's not immediate, so I run it. It's good. Then we have Feed the Swarm to deal with an enchantment or a creature. We do lose life, but we don't care. We're also running a full play set of Infernal Grass, so we can destroy target creature and lose 2 life. Since we're black-white, we also have Fracture, which destroys an artifact, enchantment, or a planeswalker. This card, every time I've ever drawn this card, it's always had an immediate target. Next up in there, we can destroy monocolored permanents. This card pulls work. This card is good. It exiles. It's really good. Really good value. And then for a little bit of reach, we have an X spell. We get 2/1 or X 2/1 white-black England creatures with flying. They come into play tap. Remember that. Remember that they come into play tap, because sometimes that'll mess you up. But if X is 6 or more, we destroy all non-creature, non-land permanents, and then put those guys into play. So it's really worth it. I mean, this thing, for 2 mana, you get 4 power. For 4 mana, you get 4 power. It's on curve. It works pretty well. When you can sink 6 or 7 into this really becomes a wow factor. It does a lot of work. I've used this spell a lot. Next up, we have our she is a cleric. Drawn in the Last Blood Chief. I thought she was a non-cleric. She's over here in the non-cleric creature pile, but oh well. When drawn in the Last Blood attacks, defending player chooses a non-legendary creature card from your graveyard. Return that card to the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on it. The creature is a vampire in addition to its other type, so it's more recursion. Next up is Flying Lifelink, which is whenever you cast your second spell each turn, look at the top 3 cards of your library, put one of them in your hand and the rest in your graveyard. So it's card selection and lifelink on an angel, which we have a little bit of angel support. Lisa, the Forgotten Archangel, is also a flying lifelink 4/5 for 5, which is great. And whenever a non-token creature I control dies, I can return it to my hand at the beginning of the next end step. If a creature an opponent controls would die, exile it instead. So again, 2 abilities we're looking for. It's great. It's great top end. We have some MDFCs. Cabera Takedown deals damage equal to the number of creatures I control, the target creature or planeswalker. 3 mana, we get to reveal their hand and choose a card with mana value 3 or greater and make them discard it. This comes up a lot. I actually use the discard side of this spell quite often. It's pretty good. Next is McKinney's Stampede. Creatures we control get +2/+2. This can help us end the game, or it's a land. Last feed, we can deal 4 damage to them and gain 4 life. Comes up from time to time. Also in here, we are running 1 copy of Field of Ruin against Exalted on the Barhaven land, just in case. And then we are running 2 pathways, summoning snow-covered swamps, a Hive of the Eye Tyrant, which can turn into a 3/3 Beholder creature that exiles a card for 4 mana, plus this card that's 5, so always keep that in mind. You need 5 lands, 2 of them black to do this. But it's good to have a creature on a stick that can dodge sorcery, speed, removal. And that's about it for my Clerics deck. Again, this is Will down here at Magic, the Friendly Tavern. We're on Facebook. I want to tell you guys happy pack pulls, and as always, happy games.